hands. Wakey, wakey, wakey.
Really, you think you're working a sort of a normal job, well, not so much when you're at sea, but a normal job when you're ashore of establishment. When you get back to sea and start doing the exercise, especially when you go on deployment and work with the Americans, you realise then what it's all about.
No smoking on the upper deck, no gases to be ditched, all personnel not involved in the helo transfer, clear up the quarter deck, bound 52 deck, port and starboard side 1 deck, aft, helo transfer in progress.
Some guys just seem to think, I'm in the Navy. A lot of guys say, I only do it as a job. I hate the Navy 23 hours a day, 1 hour they think it's okay. But when it comes to the crunch, the ship's pride and spirit comes from.
Spraying restrictions lifted, 51 small arms magazines closed.
I've been in the Navy for 23 years and it's what I've always set as my pinnacle to achieve, to have command of an operational destroyer or frigate. And this is it, and I reckon that it's one of the best jobs in Australia.
Life on board even the larger warships can be unpleasant and cramped. The intimate conditions, though, and a long tradition, create a special brotherhood.
It's pretty hard to try and explain. If you go to parties with your mates and things like that, they ask you what you do. You've got to try and bring it back to their terms. They ask what it's like, and there's nothing you can equate it with anywhere else. It is very different. It's strange, you can be with 300 people for 3 weeks and still be the loneliest bloke in the world. And that happens a lot. Especially with young kids, young married kids as well. They feel it, but they've just got to be able to accept it. It's like anything. If you can accept it and learn to live with it, fine. There's a system there to help you out. Sometimes it seems to work for you, sometimes it works against you. Sailors are pretty narky. They can get nasty. And it just goes, and if the worst comes to worst, it's squashed straight away. If someone doesn't fit, he soon finds out. So he either tries and fits in himself, and if he does, then sure, he's there, he's accepted.
October 1944. At last, General MacArthur was returning to his beloved Philippines. His invasion force was the largest ever assembled. 550 ships, including RAN forces, arrived off Leyte Island and commenced a heavy bombardment. The Japanese were to take up the challenge. The battle for Leyte Gulf had begun. This time, the Japanese were desperate, and they launched suicide attacks. Kamikaze. Little could be done to stop a pilot determined to crash his plane into a ship and end his life.
The unnerving thing was that you could follow that aircraft in till he emerged in the ground echo, and he was probably 300 yards away then. If they hadn't stopped him by the time he was 300 yards away, he was going to hit someone. So I was well aware of where he was, and I still couldn't see him, but I knew he was going to hit on the port side. And that was quite traumatic too. It was quite unnerving that there was nothing more you could do. You'd done all you could do, and then he was still coming in, and you waited for the close-range weapons to open up, and when they stopped, he was too close for them to bear on. And the next thing was the crunch, the big hit.
The new H.M.A.S. Australia suffered kamikaze hits, and 30 men were killed, including Captain Duchesneau and Commander Raymond. Commodore Collins was seriously wounded. Australia was hit several more times over the course of the battle and was eventually withdrawn. By July 1945, the war was drawing to a close. Borneo was to be the scene of the last amphibious assault of World War II. At last, the RAN was in direct support of Australian troops.
The excitement was there for those mainly on the upper deck who were able to watch the activity, in that here for the first time we were able to support our own Australian Army.
Successful amphibious operations are among the most difficult of all military manoeuvres. Even today, with the advantages of helicopter flights, landing a large force of men on a potentially hostile shore is a complicated operation requiring detailed logistical cooperation between the Air Force, Army and Navy.
Sergeant Laura's doing ammunition for the RSM. All force personnel prepare for disembarkation. Yes.
H.M.A.S. Tobruk is designed to go where the action is. She can carry and land assault troops and their supporting artillery and vehicles wherever she so chooses.
Essentially, we're a troop carrier. We carry troops and their supporting equipment. The situation we're in at the moment, we're carrying troops which are about to be landed in the next 12 hours. We've been going through a rehearsal phase this morning, and later this afternoon we actually start flying off the troops and their supporting arms. That's their guns, 105mm howitzers and mortars. Later this evening we start putting people ashore in landing craft. Basically we can beach the ship and put stuff ashore directly through the ship's bows. We open the front end and drive stuff onto the beach. But by and large, because of other considerations, we use other landing craft to operate with us. And there we use two types. There's naval landing craft, the landing craft heavy, and also the Army LCM-8, which is smaller than the naval landing craft.
As we come around crosswind, I'll give you control of the aircraft, and from then on, we'll be in a simulated position of a stuck tail rotor. Rightio. And from there you can just play it. Okay. Just tell me what you're looking for and what you think your recovery actions are going to be when we get back to the airfield. Righto, rolling out there now. Okay, come on the controls. Okay, I have control. Righto, you have control. I've got the tail rotor pedals. Roger. Now, just bear in mind, whether you're looking for a left yaw situation, so what are you going to do with the throttle when you come round to straighten the aircraft? Okay, to straighten the aircraft, if I slowly wind the throttle off, yep, she should straighten up. Okay, fine. I'll get it straight, I'll be putting it on the ground. Okay, fine. Right, just hold that speed. That's nice. Just hold it until we come over the landing area. Okay, just nose over a little bit with the cyclic to keep that speed up. That's good. Righto. Okay, just about in my landing area. Okay. Throttle is coming off. Come down a little bit, okay, yeah, just start. Winding the throttle off there now. That's it, stand by. And you're on the ground. Good one. Cancel the horn. And throttle fully closed.
In all areas of aviation, the instructor and the student develop a unique relationship. In the Fleet Air Arm, that's perhaps not so different, except that I believe that our instructors are amongst the best in the world. We have a close relationship with the Central Flying School in the United Kingdom, where our instructors are taught, and they come out from time to time and check our instructors out to make sure we're following current standards. So I believe we've got good instructors, in fact the best available today, and that these guys take it upon themselves to train naval aviators to the highest possible standard.
We're simulating that we've lost tail rotor altogether. Okay, you ready? Yep. Here we go. Just follow me through. Okay, there it is. Starting the turn there now. Try and hold your ground position. Now, you've assessed of what's going on. All you've got hold of now is you can grab hold of the throttle and just start winding the throttle back slowly. There you are. We're coming back into the dead throttle range there now. There we are. Starting to slow down, starting to slow down. Just watch it there, Righto, we're looking for it. Probably hear the horn coming as the revs start to die off. There we go. Stand by and on the ground.
Pay attention this way, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get on with the debrief for exercise Canopus. On the screen in front of you, you see the situation at game start. The friendly forces in the middle of the picture are heading northeast, and friendly aircraft gained a detection shortly after game start on enemy surface units to the northeast at a range of approximately 20 miles. Reporting AD, has enemy radar been reported?
These training activities, mainly the Submarine Warfare Systems Centre and the Surface Warfare School, train people at 3 levels.
Right, the intention is to do another all-round look, then I'll check the firing bearing and fire.
Firstly, the basic level, and then an advanced level, and finally we take ship or submarine command teams and train them up to a level of proficiency before they go to sea for trials or operations.
Yemen, Captain.
By its very nature, naval operations at sea are risky, and so the purpose of these training facilities we have here, particularly the simulators we have, is to bring command teams up to a level of proficiency that makes it safe for them to proceed to sea and get going with their training.
Right, team, I have one ship in flight, which is an FFG, and a bow red flight.
The submarine simulator is a tactical trainer, and its primary role is to teach people the use of the combat system in the submarine and the control system. The trainees are able to see visually as they would see through a periscope, and at the same time you have the consoles for the submarine combat system for the torpedo and subsurface fired missiles.
2, 1, fire! 2-2 fired. 3-2 fired. 4-2 fired. 5-2 fired. 6-2 fired. 1-2 fired. All weapons away.
In the tactical trainer building we have 3 ship models which very closely resemble operations rooms of ships at sea.
I intend to take the right hand of the 2 targets, if it ever
Now,
comes to.
in this way, this is quite different to the submarine side of things because it's most important for ships at sea to be constantly cooperating with other ships and with aircraft. And that simulator is designed to enable us to take teams up to a fairly high level of tactical training. When we have, say, 3 command teams closed up playing a tactical game in the tactical trainer building, we have a large number of other people who are in cubicles which might be driving aircraft, helicopters, submarines, or other ships. So for a fully fledged tactical game in that facility requires a very large number of people to be involved.
5 speed, 12. Unknown, 03. Yep.
This is Bravo Foxtrot, roger.
Look at Australia, look at a map, look at the blue water that we have surrounding us, look at the distances we have to travel, look at the range of weather conditions that we have to deal with. And my answer is, yes, we do need a blue water navy. And to me, a blue water navy is not just destroyers. A blue water navy is the submarines we need for surveillance, intelligence gathering, interdiction. A blue water navy are the surface ships we need for policing the economic zone, for protecting our sea lines of communication, not only in focal areas around the coast, but sometimes at extended distances out into the deep ocean. We need those surface ships to display a presence in the areas around us, in the Southwest Pacific, in Southeast Asia, to back up the diplomatic initiatives that the government wants to take to demonstrate to people that Australia is a country that can provide a secure environment for these new nations that we see around us. I think the Navy that we have in being today is reasonably balanced. There are some weaknesses that we are plugging, but when you look at the threat that faces it, I think we have a well-balanced Navy, and within the resources that I see available to us, I see no reason why we shouldn't continue to develop and maintain that Navy.
Bass Strait patrols, performed by Fremantle-class patrol boats, are among the most important of all RAN duties.
The whole operation is called Bass Strait Oil Rig Surveillance, and the duty of the patrol boat who's on duty during that time is to maintain a vigilance to prevent merchant ships from straying into the area around the oil fields in case that one should have an accident by colliding with an oil rig. Also, it's to keep yachts and small fishing craft and pleasure craft outside a distance of 500 metres from the oil rigs. Well, if you have a look at the weather today, this is the exception rather than the rule. On a 2 weeks patrol in area Bass in Bass Strait, you could look at probably a maximum of 3 days of calm weather like this, with the majority of the weather being in excess of 2 metres, 2 to 3 metres, and the whole problem with the weather down in Bass Strait is it funnels up between Tasmania and Cape Otway, and the weather can change completely in about a 2-hour period. So right now we've got a nice flat sea. In 2 hours time we could have anything up to 6 or 7 metres of sea and 40 to 60 knots of wind.
You find when it's really rough that you're walking along passageways, guys are sleeping up on the deck above us. It's a little bit more comfortable there. It doesn't, you don't feel the rocking and the waving as much, so they sort of curl up into little holes that they can find.
The patrol boats are programmed to spend most of their time around the coast, not just in the southern areas. We do spend a fair bit of time in the Barrier Reef and northern areas of Australia, and occasionally we do get to overseas ports. The broad spectrum of tasks that we are asked to do ensures that we do spend a fair bit of time away from our home port and other places in Australia. And I've come from mainly big ships, and it is a different sort of life in the small ships. Much closer knit sort of life with the crew than you'd have in a larger vessel. As you can imagine, with the fairly cramped conditions that we have on board the ship, tempers do tend to fray a little. However, that depends on the crew and how they get on themselves. It's very much a personality sort of thing.
After World War II, the decision was made for the RAN to acquire 2 aircraft carriers. And with the commissioning of H.M.A.S. Sydney in 1948, the RAN was no longer designated a squadron, she was a fleet. In 1951, Sydney was committed to the Korean conflict. The fledgling RAN Fleet Air Arm was to learn its skills in the hardest school of all, war.
We did do a great deal of flying. We had 4 squadrons on board. It was winter when we did the cruise, and the ship was covered in snow and ice, and I understand that if you went in the water there, none of us did, that you only had 4 or 5 minutes before you were froze to death. As I say, we flew hard, but you flew hard for short periods.
Landing an aircraft on Sydney with her straight deck was a hazardous business.
You couldn't see very much for 2 reasons. First of all, it had a great big long nose and a propeller disc going in front of you. And in fact, you could hardly see the ship at all on your final approach. And so you, just like a World War I fellow, you pulled your goggles down over your eyes and leaned out in the slipstream, and you could see the batsman, and the batsman gave you the instructions until the very last second, and then you could see the deck. If there was any sort of sea running, the back end of the deck could be going up and down 30, 40 feet. But because that's where the batsman could help you. You tried to ignore that when you saw it at the last minute. He got the feel of when the ship was going to steady for a while, and then hopefully it cut you at the right moment and you came on. Well, it wasn't exactly frightening. Exciting is closer to the word. In those days with the straight deck, which the early ships were, and the Sydney, of course, was a straight deck, you had to have these great big barriers up in front to prevent a fellow who missed the wires with his hook running into the aircraft that were already landed on, parked up forward. So if you missed the wires, you went into the fence, and it was fairly damaging to the aircraft, expensive noises. But very rarely the pilot got hurt. And of course there was the odd fellow who went over the side, caught a wire and went over the side, and sometimes even hit the back end of the ship before he got on. I can't remember what the accident rate was, but at one stage it was pretty horrific. I think something like 1 in 10 landings was an accident of some sort. I was often asked how I got bald at a fairly young age, and the answer was quite simple. I said I lost 1 hair for every deck landing I did, but 6 for every one I watched, because they were far worse to watch than they were to do, I think.
In 1955, the RAN took delivery of H.M.A.S. Melbourne. With her angled flight deck and steam catapult, she was to become the pride of the RAN for years to come.
It was a very fortuitous time for Australia. For example, there were these Majestic class light fleet carriers that were partially built in the UK. There were a number of Sea Fury fighters and Firefly aircraft which were obtainable at a reasonable price. There was, from the aircrew point of view, there were a number of ex-RAF chaps who'd flown in World War II who were keen to join this new fleet air arm. There were some New Zealand chaps and some Royal Naval chaps. So all these circumstances all melded together to make it just about the right situation at the right time.